Okay, here's my question. Could Donald Trump have opened his State of the Union address the way Richard Nixon did in 1974, by essentially telling the political system to move on from a scandal? Nixon stood before Congress at the height of Watergate and declared, 1 year of Watergate is enough. It was a line aimed to project fatigue, authority, closure over an investigation that was still very much alive. Watching Trump's latest address, I couldn't help but think about that moment in history. And it wasn't because of anything he said, but because of what he chose not to say. I watched the State of the Union address expecting confrontation, controversy, because that's where the story usually is. But in this case, here's what struck me. And I'm wondering whether it struck you too. This time, the story was in the negative space. Trump broke Bill Clinton's record for the longest State of the Union address. His speech was long, confident, tightly scripted, and conspicuously silent on one of the most politically volatile issues currently shadowing the US administration. For more than 100 minutes, President Donald Trump spoke about the economy, families, tax relief, national strength. But on the Epstein files, the ongoing document scrutiny, the mounting political pressure on transparency, there was absolute silence. And that silence to me did not feel like an oversight. It felt like strategy. For more than 100 minutes, President Donald Trump spoke about the economy, families, tax relief, women, policy wins, but on the question that lawmakers, journalists, and survivors advocates have been actively raising, there was nothing. Not a mention, not a deflection, not a defensive acknowledgement, not even a passing acknowledgement. You saw it too, right? President Donald Trump was outlining economic gains, highlighting personal stories, all carefully selected. Mothers, working families, symbolic beneficiaries of his policies. But the political reality inside the chamber was impossible to ignore, and he ignored it. Lawmakers were wearing pins that read, "Stand with survivors, release the files." Survivors of Epstein's abuse were present as invited guests. The controversy was physically in the room. It was politically alive, publicly visible. Yet from the perspective of the podium, it simply did not exist. How do you ignore an elephant in the room when the elephant is literally sitting in the gallery wearing a protest pin? You do it when you're weaponizing silence. When your choice to speak on everything from taxes to Iran, but not on the Epstein files, that choice is not an oversight. It is narrative control. This was a masterclass in message discipline versus transparency. And it was pretty clear there was some broadcast management going on. A significant number of lawmakers were wearing those bright pins that read, "Stand with survivors, release the files." Survivors of Epstein's abuse were physically present in the gallery. They were invited by certain members of Congress. They were sitting right there. This controversy wasn't just some hashtag trending online. It was physically present in the room. But on the live broadcast, you couldn't really see them properly. It was impossible to make it out clearly. That's part of the broadcast management. Isn't that surreal? You have the president speaking for nearly 2 hours, literally making eye contact with the very people demanding answers from his administration, and he acts as if the issue simply doesn't exist. Now, some of you may be thinking, so what if Trump skipped over the Epstein files? That doesn't prove anything. And yes, you are right in a way. This is not about Trump the person or his past, but it is about his position as US president, as the leader of a country where the Epstein files have revealed how deeply the elite control the system, where the Epstein files have now become a political flashpoint tied to transparency, justice, institutional credibility, and public trust. And remember, a massive portion of the Epstein files are not even publicly available yet. Key material, including dozens of FBI witness interviews referenced in evidence logs, may not be fully accessible in the public database. That discrepancy alone raises serious questions. If records are logged but not publicly visible, the debate shifts from disclosure to completeness, from release to accountability. No government can wash its hands of this mess by saying, "We've released so many documents." It's what you do afterwards that matters. Yes, going back to Trump, it's a political dimension that no strategist in Washington can ignore. The president's name does appear in thousands of references. Trump has repeatedly denied wrongdoing, and the White House has called allegations tied to historical claims false and sensationalist. The Department of Justice has stated that no documents were deleted, explaining that certain materials were redacted, privileged, duplicated, or linked to ongoing investigations. But here's the issue I keep coming back to. Procedural explanations cannot stop political scrutiny. They cannot replace judicial processes. And here's the other thing that struck me, the timing. Hours before the speech, fresh reporting questioned whether additional Epstein-related documents, including FBI interviews and investigative notes, have been withheld or temporarily removed. Lawmakers were already raising concerns. Media coverage was intensifying. Survivor advocacy was gaining visibility, and yet the president chose to deliver one of the longest State of the Union addresses in modern memory without addressing the controversy even once. That is not avoidance by accident. That is fixing the narrative. You all saw it. Trump's speech leaned heavily into economic storytelling. And did you notice how frequently women were referenced? Mothers, workers, families navigating financial hardship. They were all framed as beneficiaries of tax cuts, credits, policy programs. It was a narrative of stability, empathy, economic reassurance, but during a period of inflation anxiety and employment pressures. Politically, it's effective. Strategically, it's coherent. But analytically, it also functions as a diversionary focus, a shift away from the legal and investigative chaos towards an emotionally resonant domestic policy framing. If he acknowledges the Epstein case, even if he were just to deny it or brush it off, Trump validates the protesters. He gives them oxygen. He gives them a clip for the morning news. Trump would be putting the words Epstein files into the official transcript of the State of the Union. So by ignoring it completely, he starves them of that moment. He forces the news cycle to cover what he wants to talk about. He doesn't say fake news, he doesn't say witch hunt, he creates an alternate reality. One where the Epstein files simply don't exist. Yes, President Trump tried everything, but it was still hard to distract from the undercurrent inside the chamber in the House of Representatives. Survivors tied to the Epstein case were present. Lawmakers demanding file transparency were visible. Questions about missing interview records were circulating like wildfire. Representative voices were openly asking whether the legal mandate to release all Epstein-related documents had been fully followed. You know what this creates? A layered political moment, the official narrative of governance and progress coexisting with the unresolved investigative controversy hovering just beneath the surface. From where I'm standing, the omission does not kill the story, it amplifies it. In 2026, silence is not neutral. When a president addresses the nation for nearly 2 hours and avoids a topic dominating political and media discourse, that absence is a message in itself. Some of you may say that the State of the Union is about policy, not allegations. But some of you are also saying, and I'm with you on this, that transparency demands acknowledgement, especially when questions about missing records and survivor testimonies are actively being debated. What I saw ultimately was a speech designed to dominate the narrative landscape, to anchor public attention on economic messaging, personal success stories, national direction. It was polished, it was calculated, it was politically disciplined, but it was also delivered in a moment where the Epstein files debate is evolving from a document release issue into a broader test of transparency, institutional trust, political accountability. So here's my view. This was not just a State of the Union address. It was demonstration of narrative management under pressure. A stark reminder that in high-stakes politics, leaders do not just communicate through what they say. They communicate through what they deliberately choose not to say. And on this night, the absence of any reference to the Epstein files has just become one of the most hard-hitting, politically loaded silences in the United States. This is APT Opinion. Share this video, subscribe to our channel, and next time there's a big political speech, I hope we'll all be listening hard to this silence and what it reveals.